Welcome back, ACCA Financial Management Candidates. I am so excited to guide you through today's explainer, where we're going to master Chapter 15, which is all about cash management. We're going completely in depth on cash preservation and forecasting today, and you probably already know this, but that is a massive part of Syllabus Area C2F. Now, if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by the technicalities of liquidity management, honestly, don't worry. By the end of our time together, you're going to see exactly how all these concepts piece together, giving you the exact structure you need to absolutely ace these questions on your exam. Let's get into it.
But before we start looking at the mathematical models, I want you to consider a seemingly ridiculous question. Why would a company ever complain about having too much cash? Isn't having piles of cash the ultimate dream? Well, not in corporate finance. In the real world, cash that's just sitting idly in a bank account is actually a huge missed opportunity. It earns very little, if any, return. But on the flip side, if a company has too little cash, they're risking insolvency. So the absolute core problem we're tackling today is this eternal tension between holding idle cash versus maintaining just enough liquidity to survive.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Our roadmap for today is pretty straightforward. First, we'll look at the motives for holding cash. Second, centralized treasury and forecasting. Third, the Baumol cash model. Fourth, the Miller-Orr cash model. And we'll wrap up with your key exam revision takeaways.
Starting off with Section 1, Motives for Holding Cash. You see, every single dollar a business decides to hold serves one of three very distinct purposes. First up is the transactions motive. This is just the gritty reality of day-to-day operations, right? Paying suppliers, making payroll, covering utility bills, keeping the lights on. Next, we have the precautionary motive. Think of this as the ultimate safety buffer. It's basically an emergency fund for those unexpected shocks that inevitably hit every single business. And third, the speculative motive. Now, this is the fun one. This means holding cash so that when a sudden, highly lucrative investment opportunity drops out of literally nowhere, you have the immediate liquid funds to just seize it without scrambling around trying to secure a loan. Recognizing which of these motives is driving a company's cash balance is really your very first step in financial management.
Moving right along to Section 2, Centralized Treasury and Forecasting.
There is a night and day difference between organizational structures when we talk about managing cash. When a company centralizes its treasury, it unlocks this incredibly strategic, cohesive cash flow forecasting. All the liquidity is pooled together. And what that means is, if one subsidiary happens to have a cash deficit and another has a surplus, the treasury can just balance them out internally. No paying expensive external borrowing rates. Now contrast that with decentralized operations. Under that setup, cash forecasting is completely fragmented. You end up with trapped, idle cash sitting around in regional accounts, completely missing out on those strategic, organization-wide benefits. So a quick tip for your exam, always champion the centralized approach for large organizations.
All right, let's hit Section 3, which is a big one, the Baumol cash model. The absolute best way to wrap your head around the Baumol model is to lean entirely into a really simple analogy. I want you to treat cash exactly like inventory. Imagine a warehouse manager who's trying to decide how many boxes of stock to order. If they order way too many, their storage costs are going to be massive. But if they order too few, they're constantly paying those massive shipping fees for new deliveries. Baumol applies this exact same logic just to cash balances. It helps a business figure out the optimal lot size of investments to liquidate into cash. It's perfectly balancing the cost of doing the transaction against the cost of holding that idle cash.
Let's walk through exactly how this works, step by step. Step 1, you absolutely must identify predictable, steady cash needs over a given period. Step 2, you calculate the ordering costs, which in this context are the transaction fees for liquidating your short-term investments. Then, you weigh those against the holding costs, which is the interest you are essentially losing out on by keeping that cash sitting in a non-interest-bearing checking account. Step 3, by running those numbers through the Baumol formula, you arrive at your optimal liquidation lot size. It's the literal mathematical sweet spot where the combined total of your transaction costs and your opportunity costs is completely minimized.
It's an incredibly elegant model, isn't it? But, well, we have to address the elephant in the room here. What if daily cash flows are completely unpredictable? The major flaw of the Baumol model is that it relies heavily on the assumption of perfect, steady, predictable cash outflows. But in the messy real world we actually live in, one day a business might collect a ton of massive invoices, and the very next day it might get hit with massive unexpected expenses. Baumol completely falls apart in that scenario.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, the Miller-Orr cash model.
I want you to think of the Miller-Orr model like a thermostat in your house, but specifically designed for cash. First, you set an upper limit.
When a company's cash balance randomly drifts up and hits this ceiling, the thermostat clicks on, triggering the Treasury to instantly buy short-term investments, which drains the cash right back down to normal. Next, you have a lower limit. If the cash drains out and hits this floor, it triggers the Treasury to quickly sell investments to raise emergency cash. And sitting right there in the middle is the return point. That's your target balance. Whenever an upper or lower limit is triggered, the Treasury transacts just enough to return the balance exactly back to this safe, comfortable middle point.
So the magic number here really is 3. There are 3 critical boundaries in the Miller-Orr model: the upper limit, the lower limit, and that safe return point right in the middle. And here's a massive secret for your exam. The distance between these 3 boundaries is entirely dictated by the variance of the company's daily cash flows. Basically, the wilder and more unpredictable the daily cash fluctuations are, the wider apart these limits need to be set to stop the company from constantly, endlessly incurring transaction fees.
Finally, Section 5, Exam Revision Takeaways. Let's lock this in.
Let's do a rapid-fire recap so you're totally prepared. Number 1, lock in those 3 motives for holding cash: transactions, precautionary, and speculative. Number 2, when it comes to forecasting, always remember that a centralized treasury equals pooled, highly strategic forecasting. Number 3, the second you see Baumol on the exam, I want you to instantly think predictable inventory lots, balancing holding costs right against transaction costs. And number 4, when you see Miller-Orr, think daily variance limits. That's the thermostat model that buys and sells at upper and lower boundaries based entirely on unpredictability. Just make sure you explicitly understand that core differentiator. Baumol is for the predictable, and Miller-Orr is for the variable. Liquidity management really is the ultimate balancing act of corporate finance. You have to hold enough idle cash to survive the bad days, but you must invest enough to thrive on the good ones. So as you head into your ACCA exam, look closely at whatever scenario they give you and ask yourself, are these cash flows perfectly steady or are they wildly unpredictable? Which of these models is going to save this company from insolvency? Master that distinction, and I promise you, you will completely master this chapter. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and best of luck with your revision.